All right, thank you all for joining. This session is kind of stemming off of where we had 4 weeks ago, where we talked about how to deploy VCF like in a lab environment. I went with the PowerShell script that you can see on my screen here. This is like the default, except for I did comment some stuff out, but the default password. You can just like Google William Lam PowerShell and for VCF, and you'll find the link. I'll also post it in the description of the video later. But the problem is, and I love to do everything live, but you're seeing like I just powered this on like 10 minutes ago. It is still powering on all these VMs. It took me over 4 hours to run the PowerShell script. Was about maybe 30, 45 minutes, but configuring VCF took over 3 hours. Again, that was probably my home lab. As you can see, I've got this one single box that is like my big box that has the most compute and RAM. These little nooks cannot handle all this from VCF. In the script, I'll go over it. All you need from this is the nested ESX appliance and the Cloud Builder OBA. You can get both of the, well, you can get one of these from the Fling site now, I think is where it's been moved to since we switched to the Broadcom servers. The Cloud Builder, you will need some kind of entitlement to download it. So if you're working with a customer, a TAM may have to download this for you, or an SE or whoever. These licenses I'm okay showing because they're already expired. Now, I did this with 5.1. With the 5.1 VCF deployment, it required licenses. You could not do eval. I believe now with the 5.1.1, there is an option to use eval licenses. So take that as you will. In this case, I just left everything the same as what William had said or had built. So the management domain, pool name for the IP addresses. This will be the JSON for the management hosts, and the JSON for the API to deploy them with the backend, or you could use the UI to deploy those hosts. And what I mean by that is if you scroll down just a little bit, these are the VI workload domain hosts, the virtual hosts. So there's 4 of them. By default, there's only 4 management. These get built automatically with Cloud Builder. And in my case, I wanted 2 more. So that's why I added 2 more. But these do not get deployed in VCF, but they do get deployed as NSX hosts. And you walk through it and we'll go through it. And then everything else kind of falls in line. I left the IP ranges the way that William had them, all that. You could change the specs, the compute specs of either cluster. So now this is where it's fun. I had to do it as a video, so please forgive me on this. Hopefully we can go through this pretty quick. And I'm going to try to do full screen. That's as full as I'm going to get. Please come off mute if you have any questions or anything while we go through this. I'm going to talk over the deployment in here. Obviously, there is no VApp for VCF yet. Here's the script that I just kind of went over. You can see where I uncommented those lines. William actually has another script where if you just needed to do extra management hosts or extra VI workload, you could just deploy that script and just build them that way. In my case, I just wanted to rebuild the VI workload, so that's why I had those other ones commented out. So in this case, I got the script. Would you like to proceed? Yep. And it goes through and connects to your vCenter, and we'll get it going. So this video is about an hour long. Really, it took me 4 hours, and even editing, I could only get down to an hour. So I may be skipping through here. I'm going over the script again in this case. So let me just speed it up Deploying the first ESX host. These, like I said, are fairly quick. Because all it has to do is deploy the OVA and then it changes the compute specs. And then once it boots up, it'll change the root password to what we set in the script. And then it also sets the NICs to the networks that we defined as well, like the vMotion, the vSAN. That's the other thing, that this will actually configure the vSAN for you. And I just sped up here. As you can see now, it's almost done with actually it's done with all the nested ESX hosts and the cloud builder. The cloud builder takes a little bit longer because it has all the software binaries to actually deploy VCF. In this case, I'm now connecting to the cloud builder. And we'll go through the process as if you've ever deployed VCF, you have an idea. I'm getting the password here because I couldn't remember what the administrator username was, or the password was set, because you do have like 3 or 4 different types. You got the vCenter, you got the ESX root, you've got the NSX manager, and then cloud builder username and password here. And of course, NSX, as you can see, it's VMware 1 bang, VMware 1 bang, because it has different password requirements than everything else. So I wasn't paying attention when I did this. I pulled up the wrong, I guess the admin name here. I like to show where I failed through this, but it was actually the password. I pulled the wrong password in. This is the process that takes forever. In this case, I kind of sped it up. As you can see, it's now bringing up the environment. It's already created the thumbprints, the trust certificates, all that, right? The PowerShell script is done itself. Now it's all Cloud Builder to do its thing. So if you were at the customer and you were deploying this in production, you go through this process, really. You're not going to use the PowerShell script to deploy in production. I'm sorry. It's not the way it works today. So it's now preparing the ESX host for the vSAN configuration, where it's going to put them in the cluster and all that. I sped it way up. We just went 4 hours pretty quickly here. Goes through deploying the NSX manager. In this case, too, the default in the script only deploys one vCenter or NSX manager. In real world, we want at least 3 for both the management domain and the VI workload domains. So next it'll say, okay, finish, and it'll launch the SDDC manager. So this is where you're going to be for here on out with VCF. And I'm just showing you, this is the nested vCenter that gets created, and you saw all 6 of the ESX hosts that I wanted. Now I'm in the SDDC manager. And as any good wizard does, it wants you to go through step 1, step 2, all that, right? Now I'm just going to skip that. Just kidding, I actually click next and kind of just showing you what that wizard looks like. You have 2 options. You could do with VCF is like a consolidated domain where the management and any other VMs you want can be all in the same workload domain or management domain. In this case, we're going to assume like we're doing production where you have a management cluster and a workload cluster going forward. Okay. on Virtual Joey. Let's click next. Here is the dashboard. So again, my scenario here, I've only got the management domain, so that's the only domain that's there, and these are all the stats for that. As we go on the forward here, you'll see that like two different domains. So again, just showing the vCenter, the nested vCenter. There is some, tasks like, it's doing the management image upload for lifecycle. If you wanted to create a new workload domain, you just click up there. You do need to commission the host first. You can do Kubernetes workload management, and in 5.1.1, you can actually do the private AI. In 2 weeks, we'll actually do the video of upgrading this 5.1 environment to 5.1.1. And I apologize, it is another video again because it is a long process in my home lab because I'm just resource limited. Here's your workload domain. So you could add a cluster, add an edge cluster, add an AVN, or rename the domain. As you can tell, I'm on 5.1.0.0. It's key based, which going forward, that is the only option now that we did away with the VCF plus connected. Services I have so far is just the vCenter NSX cluster, which is again just the one NSX manager. At the time, there's no updates yet because I haven't connected to the VMware depot to download the newest ones. Obviously, as a new build, there's no previous update history. I kind of run into an error every now and then because I'm just kind of rushing through it to kind of record it. Here's all the hosts in that management cluster. I did 8 instead of 6. You kind of see everything at that high level. You have a vSAN IP address range, vMotion as well. And I'll show you how you can add more to that here in a second. Options, you can actually go directly to that ESX host if you wanted to. If you saw something that you wanted to connect to the web client or the host client on it, you can. And I'm just showing here, even though it's a Nest ESX host, it still looks like a regular ESX host. So really, the PowerShell script, once I ran it a few times just to make sure everything was good. I did get some errors. Usually it was resource stuff that I had to kind of either power off some other VMs or whatever on my physical box. I kind of use this as almost a hands-on labs where I would spin it up, go make some changes, break it up, delete all the VMs, redeploy, just redeploy the script over again. So it's one of the benefits of using the PowerShell script instead of doing like the Holodeck. It's a little more time consuming or difficult to just automate the process. Here's the release versions. As I said, I haven't connected to the depot to see that the 5.1.1 had come out. At a glance there, you can see what versions everything's on, and you could have, let's say, the SDC manager on 5.1.1, but everything else is still on 5.1, and it'll actually show you that. You get the release notes, all that. Here's the network settings. For DNS configuration, I only have a single DNS, and I'm just using the US pool ntp.org. for my NTP. That's also in the PowerShell script. So here's your network pool. In case you're going to grow larger than this, then you could just add additional. There you go. I did not choose edit initially, but here you can add additional ranges. Even though this is set to like VLAN 0, you want to kind of make sure your IP ranges are on the same scope. And if anybody has any questions, please just come off mute or type in the chat. I'm kind of paying attention to that as we go through this. I didn't really need to add all these additional ones, but I'm just kind of going through the process of showing you how easy it is.
Can you speak to any external switch configuration or needs that may be important to note about this?
Like top of rack stuff.
Yeah.
In this case, I already had the IP ranges kind of blocked out on my home switch that I'm using. I'm using I think it's a TP-Link Omada router. In a production scenario, I think you might have to fall in line because since we are deploying NSX, you might have to adhere to those policies that it requires. Now, I'm not going through here and change anything else. I just need to get the networks that VCF wants, right? So that's just something we can talk about or show later on. In this case, you do have two other options you could use for single sign-on. Obviously, it's going to be ADFS and Okta. There's talks of some other stuff coming in the future. I don't want to say what those could be or when that is, since this could be public facing. I do not need an internet proxy, but you can set one up. The online depot. This is where you would put it in at the time it was customer connect. I'm sure that whatever version comes out after 5.1.1 will point to the new depot or whatever we're going to do in the future. Here I use one of our test accounts to connect so that you can start downloading. Not really going to talk about the composable or right here because I'm not going to be able to demo any of that. I haven't heard of any customers that were using this myself. But we'll take you to the VMware docs that's going to talk about it. I would say early on, I was not a big fan of VCF because it just wasn't something that I explored or used. Now that I'm getting into it, it kind of helps me in day to day, kind of if I was an admin of a large environment. You do need to do a backup of the SDDC manager. That's what that was. You can deploy ARIA Suite through here. And then the last thing here is the customer experience improvement program that's everywhere nowadays. You can disable or enable it there. The password management, it does like a rotate of all these accounts for you. You can also tie in third parties like CyberArk, whatever that you can use the API to do this. I did have this off for about a month, and when I booted up, the first thing it did after everything was started up was rotate all these passwords. You can do a certificate authority. I think in my lab, I think what I'm going to do here is power on my certificate authority and just connect to it and just show you how easy that is. So Microsoft is the only option today. And then I'm going to use my VMware or vSphere template that I had created. Thumbprint, all that, right? Yeah, and the subject alternative names and stuff like that I needed to update, but there you go. There's a bunch of API reference guides. And now we're going to go through the bundle management and the release versions, or I was going to. It's probably towards the end. Close that out. I'm just showing you here that these are only VMs besides the little cluster light services. And yes, I do know I have warning lights because I'm running out of compute or it's hammered. Went to the cluster level here, and I was just going to show how to, if you needed to, I think, remove some hosts. So you go to the cluster level, and you can remove them. Now, it does decommission them from here, but it doesn't remove like the vSAN partitions on that ESX host, or in this case, the nested ESX host. So it would be something if you planned on reusing those, you'd have to go through and kind of wipe them and start off fresh again. This process is fairly simple. I'm showing here is vCenter. It kicks off all the tasks to vCenter, and it's removing it from the vSAN cluster, making sure the data is all gone, and then it's going to remove it from NSX, put it in maintenance mode, and then remove it from the vCenter. So here on out, this video is basically all VCF. The deployment is really simple. If you do have a lab environment where you can kind of play around with it, I highly recommend it. It's definitely something that helped me get over being scared to deploy it, being afraid to learn new things. Is like, well, if I can spin it up and break it, I'm going to do it, and I'll learn the program or learn it a lot better that way. last 80 or the last 20%, it always takes a little bit longer. Speed that up.
Joey, any suggestions on that lab gear?
Yeah, while that's a very good question. Scott North, I just saw you ask that. So I am running this on a Dell Precision T7920. I made the mistake of going with faster CPUs versus larger core CPUs or larger number of cores. I would highly recommend that you go with as many cores as you can versus a faster CPU. The gain there is obviously I'm showing I've got hosts that are saying their CPU is maxed out or reaching that limit. The next thing is as much memory as you can because we're deploying all this on one host. My case, I only have like 192, but I've got I think it was 15 terabytes of storage between all these different drives. So I am swapping to disk a lot, but I'm also swapping to disk on some NVMEs to kind of help speed that up. So also be cautious. After I deployed vSphere 8 update 2B, I think what it was, it now says that my CPUs are probably going to be gone in a next version or two. They're fine for now, but they're going to be deprecated in another version. So there is I think William Lam also on his blog, he has it if you want to do a consolidated where everything is in the same management cluster, you could do this many CPUs, this much memory, right, and storage. If you want to break it out to what a production user would or customer would do, where you have management domain and the VI workload domain, then you need this much. So I got all my stuff on eBay. In this scenario, I believe I'm just showing that I brought that host back, I redeployed it, and added it back to the cluster. No, sorry, I did not add it back because it just tells me it needs cleanup, right? So the next option you have to do is unassigned hosts, and then you would decommission it that way. So there's two steps. You remove it from the cluster, and the next thing is you decommission it from SDDC Manager. And Brian just posted in chat, labgopher.com is a good place to get home lab equipment as well. My wife probably does not want me looking at that, but I may have to buy another box. What I was going through here is just showing you that you have to delete the vSAN partitions, all that. So let me just speed this up. The network, that's the VDS is still alive on the box as well. The one I removed and decommissioned. I wish the decommission would actually revert it all back, but it doesn't. So let me just get through that. So the next thing is, now that I've connected to the software depot that it can, or the online depot, it now says, hey, look, there's updates, right? In this video, we're not going to actually do the updates, but I'm just kind of showing you what all updates there are. And then you just click download now or schedule download. It is not a fast process at all. So, especially the larger the bundle, like these 2 gig, but then the 11 gig and 15 gig, even though I'm on a fiber network, it still took a while to download from the depot. Just speed this up along. Now I've shown that I've downloaded it. Here's the download history. Now you see a little red dot, or whatever color dot that is. Sorry, I'm colorblind, but above the updates, so it does show that I have an update. What I think I edited out was I removed 5, 6, 7, 8 because I wasn't needing them. So I just have the default 4 nested ESX hosts that we just need for the management domain. You can add, as you can see here, you can add another cluster inside of a management domain or a VI workload domain. My thinking was if I added a second cluster, then all the stuff that the VI workload domain did, I could choose. Today, you cannot choose what management cluster it is, so there's no point in doing that if you're going to do a normal kind of VCF deployment. But let's say if you were doing a consolidated VCF deployment, you could do one cluster. It's all your management VMs, your vCenter, your NSX manager, the SDDC manager in one cluster, and then you could add a separate cluster inside the management domain for everything else. So your workload, your non vCenter stuff like that, your non VMware workload could go on that separate cluster. This is what that JSON file looks like. It's the fully qualified domain name, the root password, the root admin, the network pool name, and the storage type. If you're doing the UI, you would choose the host UI JSON file. If you're going to do like basically command line, you would choose the API file instead. Here I've uploaded the host UI file JSON, and everything's in there that it needs. I'm confirmed the fingerprint, and now I'm validating it all. Everything validated successfully. Commission. So the process is a little different than what you would do in like vCenter, right? You're gonna add a host in vCenter, and then you could add it to a cluster. And here you have to commission the hosts first, and then add it to a cluster or create a cluster and add it. So now the hosts are commissioned, they're activating. And the next step would be adding to that cluster. And this, when it commissions, as you can see, it's installing a temporary VMCA certificate so that it can add it to vCenter. I'm showing here it's rotating SSH keys. Everything is ready to go, so I can now assign them to a cluster or whatever. I'm just showing you here, they are not added to the vCenter yet. They're just commissioned in VCF. I'm gonna add the cluster. These are all just regular vSAN, they're not ESAs. You name the cluster whatever you want. I'm going to carry on what was in the PowerShell script, VCF M01, as in like the first management. and cluster 02. You can choose whatever data storage you want to, policies and filters tolerate. If you want to turn on dedupe and compression. I did not. Here you have different options for profiles. So default would be like if your physical NICs were going to be all the same. I forgot which one I chose. I think I chose storage is one VDS and then everything else. It wants you to confirm the VLAN ID for the overlay for NSX. Yeah, so I have two separate VDSs, one for storage, one for management, vMotion, whatever, everything else. Part of the process when you add a new cluster is what license. I kind of just did that off screen, but I think the license is expired now, so it doesn't really matter. So now it's going to go to the process of creating that second cluster inside that management domain. I still feel like I'm doing everything live, even though this is a video. It's validating the vSAN disks. Now it's validating the network connectivity. Nothing's been done to the vCenter yet. This is all just within SDDC Manager validating all this. Once everything is good, then it adds it to the vCenter under a new cluster. Speed this up. All right, go back just a little bit here. Now, the cluster is created, but it's taken that image to. If you guys have not messed with vCenter or vSphere Lifecycle Manager yet, it uses an image based going forward. So it's taking that image, uploading it, as you see in that second. I'm trying to split them here, but task down the bottom left of the vCenter window on the left, it says update or import updates, and that's what was working on. The other thing is you can tell I ran out of licenses, so that you need to validate that as well if you're going to do a home lab. Even though you can do the eval license if you want something to run long term, with the core based everything, you got to kind of work with your account team on verifying what you need. My problem was I decided to go with 8 management initially and 4 workload, but you can have separate licenses for each cluster, but everything is kind of cluster based if you want, or workload domain based as well. It will let me add them even though I'm out of licenses. It just kept nagging me. As you can tell, the vCenter is now creating those other 2 VDS. Speed this up. Now it's starting to add the hosts. Creating the vMotion network on the host. Creating the vSAN on the host. power management policy. And then now you have a fully set up second cluster on the management domain. Daniel, what's that link you just posted in chat? CPU Sparkle. Okay, thank you.
Oh, yeah, sorry, couldn't get off mute.
You're good. I just didn't want to click it and knock myself out of the video. Again, I'm just kind of showing the network policy setup and the host. So I have two clusters, and then as you can tell, the vCenter, the SDDC manager, the NSX manager all stay on the management cluster that we initially deployed. On the right, you can see all the recent tasks, everything I've been doing is all there. You only see the single bar for everything there because it's still looking at like a domain instead of two separate clusters. Here, you can actually go drill down into each cluster if you wanted to via the domain. Got the IP address, everything. You can change the percentage to whatever you want. Speed this one up now. Oh, go right back. I finally showed the updates. If you click the updates and it tells you the vCenter and the NSX manager, there's an update for. Just another way of seeing everything. Do not have any edge clusters. And there's the certificates. Password management. Again, just get past all of that. Now I'm going to create the actual VI workload domain. So I'm just showing I've got the two management domain clusters, but now I'm going to create actual VI workload. That PowerShell script, it creates also the workload JSON for you, just like it does the management. The naming is VCF-WL for workload. Same process as we did for adding the second cluster. Just speed through this. Again, it's going to add it. Everything's going to commission the host to VCF. Now you create the second workload domain, which in this case would be that VI workload. Here you can create a new SSO domain or join the management. I chose to join the management, but let's say multi-tenant like in this scenario. If you needed a separate domain, that SSO domain to connect to, you could do that through the setup process. Now, I don't think I show this, but if you walk through this process, you have to deploy a new vCenter because it'll be for the workload. It'll try to deploy the 3 NSX managers like production. William Lam on his blog again. I think I have it at the end. I'll do the links, and I'll put it in the description or the description of this later on. But he has a script where you could apply it either at the cloud builder level, which he already does for the management domain to deploy one NSX manager. But going forward, the cloud builder is no longer in use. The SDDC manager is in play, where you could change the config to allow one NSX manager for the workload domains, but you still have to fill in this information here. So it wants the 3 IP addresses. That's one thing I need to stress too, and I didn't stress at the beginning, is your DNS reverse and forward lookups have to be set up. That was some of the issues I had early on, was that I didn't have reverse lookup of everything. Actually, I didn't have it for the 172.16.11 network. So stuff deployed, but when I went to try to add hosts to the SC manager, it failed. The error message I got point blank talked, hey, your DNS is messed up or whatever. So I want to stress that your forward and reverse lookups have to be set up for every network you have that you're going to be using. So 3 NSX managers, the NSX VIP or cluster IP has to be defined in there. It goes and validates the DNS entries, your vCenter name, all that, right? So now I've got those 4 workload domains, same process, storage traffic separation. That's the profile I end up using. You want 2 NICs for network, you want 2 NICs for storage network. You could do it all in one. I'm sure it's hard for me to break bad habits of like iSCSI networks, where I came from beforehand. So now it's going to validate this domain. Just speed this up a little more. So it's now generated deployed everything that I need for the vCenter, the NSX manager for this other workload. And I have to stress, this is kind of why your nested management workload, you want to make sure you kind of have enough compute and everything for it, because if you do the separate workload domains, everything that is management level, the vCenter, the NSX managers, all get deployed to the workload management domain. In this scenario, I was hoping I could choose which cluster within the management domain that I could deploy the other stuff to. You cannot. That's something that was brought up. Maybe that's something in the future. Can't confirm if they'll ever do that or not. But today, it'll always deploy the additional management to the first cluster of the management domain. And I'll show that here in a second. So let me just speed this up. It's now deploying the vCenter. So as I'm showing here, that is the VCF M01 CL01 is the first cluster of the management domain. The workload VCF-workload 01-VC01 is for this other domain that I'm creating, the VI workload. Speed this up a little more because we all know the vCenter takes a little longer to deploy. So everything is now deployed. I've got the essentially 3 clusters, the 2 domains. I am in the workload vCenter, and I can see the management domain because I told it to join the same SSO. That was fairly easy to do, kind of like a linked mode, enhanced linked mode kind of thing. I am connecting back to the management vCenter and showing you could also see the other way around. At this point, it's now syncing that lifecycle management profile or image. And then adding all the hosts. Go through all this. We've done this 3 times now. One of the things that VCF does not, or the SDDC manager does not do by default, or at least I haven't seen it. When you do the backup for the SDDC manager, it's only for the SDDC manager. So you do need to do the backups for your vCenter as well, which is one of the messages I think that will come up later on. There's all the VDSs, the uplinks and all that, just trying to show you what it looks like. Every cluster, every workload domain can get their own. It is creating, it's deploying the NSX manager now too. So it's not completed yet, but it's getting there. Actually, this is, so I haven't done that William Lam script to stop it from deploying 3. I'm just showing you it does ABC. This will fail, and I'll have to redo this whole management domain because of that. But I just wanted to show you, like, if you were in production, that's what it would look like. That's the end of this video. The next video and the next TAM Lab session we'll go through is actually showing what the upgrade process looks like. I'll just put this up real quick. So these are the links, like the holodeck, if you wanted to go through that, and then the PowerVCF from William's blog. Removing the NSX CPU memory reservations when deploying a VMware, that's what I was kind of talking about. Any questions? Okay. I'm gonna tell you, it's fairly simple once you get used to the PowerShell side of it. You don't ever have to worry about it. Right now, if I wanted to, I could go in here and just power off everything and then just delete it. And then if I wanted to, I just kick, apologies. I could just kick off the script again and let it run for 4 hours, come back, and everything is ready for me to go, except where I'll have to set up the management domain, or not the VI workload domain again. Kind of a home lab, hands-on lab at your fingertips kind of thing. All right. If there's no questions, I'll end today. I appreciate everyone for joining, and be on the lookout for in 2 weeks. Thank you all.
Thank you, Joey. Have a great day.
You too.